In the early 2010s, deep in a corner of the internet most people didn't even know existed, a man created a marketplace that would shake the foundations of global law enforcement, a place where anything, and I mean anything, could be bought with just a few clicks. They called it the Silk Road. It was anonymous, unregulated, untouchable, and it was built on freedom. But what if I told you that Silk Road didn't just change the dark web, it changed the future of legal business? Because the more you look around in 2025, the more you realize Silk Road didn't die, it evolved. To understand the impact of what came next, we need to go back to the beginning. Ross Ulbricht wasn't your typical criminal. He wasn't some cartel boss or underground kingpin. He was a 26-year-old physics graduate from Texas. He loved chess, philosophy, and coding, and he believed, more than anything else, that voluntary trade between consenting adults should never be restricted by governments. In his view, if two people wanted to transact, no third party had the right to stop them no matter what was being sold. So, fueled by libertarian ideals and a fascination with Austrian economics, Ross Ulbricht launched a website, but not just any website. It was hidden on the Tor network, accessed only through a special encrypted browser, built with privacy at its core. It was called the Silk Road, a name borrowed from the ancient trade routes that once connected the East and West. And on this new digital Silk Road, a new kind of trade flourished, unregulated, untaxed, unrestricted. Users bought and sold narcotics, fake IDs, hacking tools, and more, all using Bitcoin, a currency that had no borders and no bank. But here's the strange part. The Silk Road wasn't chaotic, it was surprisingly civil. There were seller ratings, product reviews, an escrow system that held funds until the buyer confirmed delivery, dispute resolution mechanisms, customer support. In many ways, it was safer, more efficient, and more customer-friendly than many legal platforms at the time. In short, it was the Amazon of crime. And then, in 2013, it all came crashing down. The FBI launched a multi-agency investigation. Undercover agents infiltrated the site. Servers were seized. Ross Ulbricht was arrested in a library in San Francisco, caught mid-chat with his laptop still open, logged into the Silk Road admin panel. He was charged with money laundering, conspiracy to traffic narcotics, and conspiracy to commit computer hacking. But the most controversial charge, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, a charge that was later dropped in court but still used to justify a life sentence. Ross was convicted on 7 counts and sentenced to 2 life terms, without the possibility of parole. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Ross sat in prison, the world outside changed. Bitcoin, once dismissed as drug dealer money, hit mainstream adoption. Banks began investing. Governments began regulating. Entire ecosystems sprang up around it. Exchanges, wallets, fintech apps, billion-dollar companies, and more quietly, the very design of Silk Road, anonymous trade, decentralized infrastructure, privacy by default, began to inspire a new generation of entrepreneurs. You see, Silk Road wasn't just a black market. It was a prototype. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing its core concepts go mainstream. Take cannabis. Once demonized as a gateway drug, it's now a multi-billion-dollar legal industry. In the United States alone, more than 20 states have fully legalized it. And if you've ever used a dispensary's website, you'll notice something familiar. Filter by product type, user reviews, verified ratings, privacy-focused checkout. It's almost identical to what Silk Road pioneered over a decade ago. Then there's the psychedelic boom. Psilocybin, the compound found in magic mushrooms, is now being legalized for therapeutic use in parts of the US and Canada. Silicon Valley is backing psychedelic therapy startups. Clinics are opening. Startups are IPOing. Billionaires are investing. And suddenly, the same substances that sent Silk Road users to prison are now being hailed as medical breakthroughs. But it goes deeper. Crypto marketplaces like OpenBazaar are recreating Silk Road's peer-to-peer model. This time, for legal goods. No centralized servers, no CEOs, just buyers and sellers transacting directly through blockchain-powered smart contracts. It's the same model with a different pitch. Privacy coins like Monero and Zcash are offering the same anonymous transactions that Bitcoin once enabled, but with even greater stealth. And while governments warn that these tools are used by criminals, companies now call it privacy tech. So where do we draw the line? Is anonymity a right or a threat? Is decentralization a tool for liberation or for lawlessness? Because here's the paradox. Ross Ulbricht is serving 2 life sentences, but CEOs who copied his blueprint, minus the drugs, are being featured on the cover of Forbes. The world didn't reject his ideas, it just rebranded them. So we're left with a difficult question. Was Ross a criminal mastermind, or simply too early? The Silk Road wasn't just a website, it was a philosophy, one that asked a dangerous question. What happens when technology makes government control optional? And that's what makes this story so uncomfortable. Not because of what Ross did, but because of what we're doing now. We've legalized the drugs, we've embraced the crypto, we've built platforms with the same bones, the same code, the same vision. We just gave it a facelift. The truth is, we live in a world shaped by criminals who never got caught and visionaries who did. If Ross had launched Silk Road today, with better lawyers and a VC deck, would we still call him a criminal, or would we call him a pioneer? It's easy to condemn him in hindsight. It's harder to admit how many of his ideas now power the platforms we use every day. Because maybe, just maybe, the future was illegal first. The Silk Road didn't just sell drugs, it sold an idea. That trust can be replaced with code, that permission can be replaced with privacy, that trade can exist without borders, without oversight, without gatekeepers. And while the site is gone, the architecture remains. In your apps, in your browsers, in your bank accounts. We like to believe that progress is born in labs and boardrooms, but sometimes it starts in the shadows, built by outcasts, punished by the system, only to be reborn years later with a shiny new logo. So here's the real question. Would you use a marketplace with no rules? If you believed the world had too many or more, simply, is it still a crime if it becomes the blueprint for the next trillion-dollar industry? Because a line between freedom and crime is thinner than we think. And in the end, the world doesn't remember who crossed the line first, only who crossed it profitably.